The air was thick with tension as Commander Jack Miller stepped off the shuttle, his boots making a soft thud against the alien ground. He looked around, taking in the unfamiliar terrain of the distant planet. It was a world unknown to human explorers, and Jack had been sent here on a mission to gather intelligence. What he hadn't expected was the sheer beauty and danger that awaited him. The landscape stretched out in every direction, towering alien flora that seemed to reach the sky, shimmering rivers of unknown substances, and distant mountains with peaks that seemed to glow in the dim light of the setting sun. But despite the breathtaking scenery, Jack felt a deep unease. This planet was far from peaceful. He'd been warned that there were creatures on this world that even the most experienced soldiers feared. He checked his communicator, but the signal was weak. His team was far behind, and he was alone now. Jack knew he had to gather data and return before nightfall, but there was a feeling in the air that something was about to change. Without warning, the ground trembled beneath him. Jack instinctively dropped to one knee, his hand reaching for his weapon. But he hesitated. A sound unlike anything he'd ever heard echoed through the trees, a deep, resonant hum that sent a chill down his spine. Then, from the thick mist that began to roll in, a figure emerged. At first, Jack thought it was some kind of beast, but as the shape became clearer, he realized it was a woman. An alien woman. Her skin shimmered with a soft, iridescent glow, and her eyes, an unnatural shade of violet, locked onto his with an intensity that sent his heart racing. She was tall, towering over him by at least a foot, with long, flowing hair that seemed to defy gravity. Her body was a perfect blend of grace and strength, and every movement she made seemed almost hypnotic. Jack couldn't move. He had heard rumors of the alien queens, powerful beings that commanded entire empires, but he never imagined he would meet one in person. The alien woman approached him with a calm, unhurried pace. As she drew closer, Jack felt a strange pull, like he was being drawn into her presence, unable to look away. He had never felt anything like this before, this mix of fear, awe, and a strange desire to know more about her. When she finally stopped in front of him, the silence between them stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Jack opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was a trained soldier, capable of handling the most dangerous situations, yet in front of her, he felt powerless. The woman's lips parted, and in a voice that was both gentle and commanding, she spoke. "Human," she said, her words flowing with an authority that made Jack's heart skip a beat. "I have been waiting for you." Jack stood frozen in place, staring at the alien queen before him. Her eyes, glowing with an otherworldly intensity, seemed to see through him, piercing into the very core of his being. He had never imagined meeting an alien of such power and beauty, let alone one who seemed to be waiting for him. The air around them felt heavy, almost thick with anticipation. Jack's mind raced, trying to process the situation. He had heard of alien species, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The legends of the alien queens were well known, but seeing one in person was a whole different experience. Her voice broke through his thoughts, calm and steady. "You are here because I have chosen you, human." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. It was as if she was speaking to him not just as a soldier, but as something more, something important. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. What could he say? What was going on? Why was she speaking to him like this? He had come here on a mission, to gather information and return safely, not to be chosen by an alien queen. She stepped closer to him, her presence overwhelming. "I have been watching your kind for some time now," she continued. "I have seen your strength, your courage. You humans have a power that even the strongest of my people do not understand." Jack still couldn't speak. He felt a strange pull toward her, something he couldn't explain. She was different, more than just an alien queen. There was something magnetic about her, something that made him feel both awestruck and uneasy. Then, with a soft, almost teasing smile, She spoke again, her words surprising him even more than the first. I offer you a choice, human. A gift, if you will. She paused, watching him closely. You have always wondered what it would be like to bond with someone. To connect on a level that no other species can understand. I can offer that. Jack blinked, his mind struggling to catch up with her words. Bond. What was she talking about? He couldn't help but feel a sense of confusion, mixed with a strange curiosity. Was she talking about something intimate? Something physical? The Queen noticed his hesitation, and her smile widened, though there was a glint of something more dangerous in her eyes now. Do not fear, she said softly. This is not a mere exchange. This is a union, one that will bind us together. A bond that will make us stronger than ever before. Jack's heart raced. What was she offering him? He had never imagined this kind of encounter, and the idea of joining with an alien queen was beyond anything he could have dreamed. But before he could fully process what she was saying, she added, almost casually, remove your clothes, human. If you wish to accept, you must show your willingness. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He had expected many things on this mission, but not this. Her words were bold, commanding, and the situation was spiraling into territory he had never imagined. Still, there was something in her gaze that made it hard to say no. Her eyes held power, and Jack found himself oddly captivated. Would he accept her offer? Could he? And what would happen if he did? Jack stood still, his mind in a whirlwind of confusion and uncertainty. The alien queen's words echoed in his ears. Remove your clothes, human, she had commanded. Her voice was soft, but carried an unmistakable authority. He had expected danger on this mission, hostile aliens, threats, and potential death. But never had he imagined this. The Queen's eyes remained fixed on him, waiting for him to make a move. Her presence was overwhelming, and Jack could feel a strange force drawing him in, urging him to accept her offer. Everything in his body told him to resist, to fight back, but another part of him was filled with a strange curiosity. What was she offering? What did this bond really mean? And why had she chosen him? He swallowed hard, trying to clear the confusion from his mind. He wasn't some naive rookie. He was a soldier, trained to deal with threats, to make quick decisions. But this was unlike anything he had faced. There was a part of him that wanted to know more, to understand what the Queen was truly offering. But at the same time, there was a voice in his head telling him to be careful, to not trust her completely. As the silence stretched on, the Queen's expression remained unreadable. Jack could feel the weight of her gaze, the pressure to decide. Her offer was tempting, but he had no idea what accepting it would mean. Would it make him a pawn in her game? Or was there something more at play here? Finally, Jack's voice broke the silence. Why me? He asked, his words rough and uncertain. It was the one question he needed answered before he could make any choice. Why had she chosen him out of all the humans in the galaxy? What made him different? The Queen stepped closer, her movements graceful yet deliberate. You are more than just a soldier, human, she said, her voice almost gentle. You are a symbol of the potential of your kind. You possess strength, intelligence, and resilience. But most importantly, you have the courage to stand before me without fear. That is what I seek. Jack's heart raced. He hadn't expected such an answer. She saw him as a symbol. What did that mean? He had always thought of himself as just another soldier, doing his duty for humanity. But now, this alien queen, with her mysterious power and allure, was telling him he was something more. He glanced at her, still unsure. Her beauty, her power, everything about her seemed beyond human comprehension. But Jack had faced challenges before. He had faced death and walked away. Maybe, just maybe, this was his moment to do something extraordinary. I don't know if I can, Jack said, his voice wavering slightly. This isn't what I signed up for. I don't even know what you want from me. The queen's expression softened just a little, though there was still a firmness in her eyes. "I want what you can give, human," she replied. "What we can create together." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Jack felt the pressure building, the decision pressing down on him. He wasn't just deciding for himself now. He was deciding for the future, for humanity, for what lay ahead. The moment stretched on, and in that silence, Jack realized something. No matter what choice he made, this moment would change everything. And with that realization, he made his decision. Slowly, he nodded. "I'll accept," he said, his voice steady now. Jack's decision hung in the air like a heavy fog. As he looked into the queen's glowing violet eyes, something deep inside him shifted. There was no turning back now. He had accepted her offer, but now he wondered what would happen next. Would his life be forever altered? What kind of bond would they share? And what consequences would it bring? The alien queen, standing before him, didn't rush him. Her calm presence made him feel as if time itself had slowed down. She gave him a look that was both reassuring and intense. Her eyes didn't leave his as she spoke, her voice low but clear. "Good," she said softly. "You have made the right choice. But understand, human, this is not just about pleasure or union. This is about power. Power that will make us both stronger." She paused for a moment, allowing her words to settle in. "Our connection will change everything. It will bridge the gap between our species, creating something that has never existed before." Jack swallowed. The weight of her words was starting to sink in. This was far beyond anything he could have imagined when he set foot on this planet. At first, he had thought this was just an alien ritual, something strange and foreign. But now he understood. It was an opportunity, a risk, and a bond that could change the fate of both their worlds. Without another word, the queen moved gracefully, walking around him as if inspecting him. Her movements were smooth and deliberate, each step measured with purpose. Jack felt every inch of her gaze as she took him in. It was like she was seeing more than just his body. She was looking into his very soul. Then, in a swift motion, the queen raised her hand, and the air around them seemed to shimmer. Jack felt a warm sensation ripple through him, like an invisible force wrapping around him. His clothes were gently pulled from his body, falling away as if by the queen's command. There was no resistance, no struggle. It felt natural, as if he were meant to be there, exposed and vulnerable before her. "Trust me," the queen whispered. Her voice was soft but firm, filled with an authority that left no room for doubt. Jack felt the weight of her words, and for a brief moment he hesitated. Was this really what he wanted? Was he truly ready for this? The decision was no longer about curiosity or exploration. It was about crossing a boundary, one that would link him to this powerful alien being in a way that no human had ever experienced. But as he met her eyes once more, he knew there was no turning back. The queen wasn't just offering him a physical bond. She was offering him something far greater, a connection that could transcend space, time, and species. "I trust you," Jack said, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts racing through his mind. The queen nodded, and without another word, she closed the distance between them. Her touch was warm, electrifying, as if the very air around them had come to life. Jack could feel the power between them. The pull, the connection growing stronger with every passing second. In that moment, something inside Jack clicked. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was something more. The bond had begun. The air around Jack seemed to thrum with energy, every moment pulsing with an almost electric charge. The queen's presence, once overwhelming, was now a constant force he could feel in every part of him. He wasn't sure what to expect, but one thing was certain: he was no longer just a human soldier. He was part of something bigger, something that was starting to feel like destiny. The queen, standing before him, motioned for him to follow. Her movements were fluid, graceful, like the ebb and flow of a river. Jack hesitated for only a moment, then followed her lead. He felt a strange warmth filling him, not just in his body, but in his mind, as if some invisible bond was being forged. Every step they took seemed to be in perfect harmony, like two pieces of a puzzle clicking together. As they entered a large chamber, Jack marveled at the alien beauty surrounding him. The walls were made of some translucent material that shimmered in the soft light, casting a mystical glow across the space. Strange symbols decorated the walls, symbols Jack couldn't quite understand but felt an inexplicable connection to. There was a faint humming sound in the air, almost like the room itself was alive. In the center of the chamber stood a large stone platform, shaped like an altar. The queen walked toward it, and without hesitation, stood at the edge. She turned to Jack, her violet eyes intense, filled with purpose. "This is where it begins," she said, her voice low but clear. "The ritual will bind us. It will connect us on a level deeper than physical touch. It will tie our fates together." Jack's heart pounded. This was the moment he had been anticipating. But despite the anticipation, a part of him still wasn't sure what exactly would happen. Would he be able to handle it? Would he truly understand what he was about to experience? The unknown was both thrilling and terrifying. The queen reached out a hand, her fingers glowing with a soft light. "You must be willing to give yourself completely," she said. "Only then will the bond be complete." Jack nodded slowly, though his mind raced. He had already decided to go through with this, but now that the moment was here, doubt crept in. This wasn't just about physical intimacy. This was something far deeper, something that would change him in ways he couldn't even predict. Without another word, the queen stepped closer to him. She raised her hands, her glowing fingertips brushing lightly against his chest. The touch sent a jolt of warmth through him, and Jack gasped softly, the sensation more powerful than anything he had ever felt. It wasn't just the queen's physical touch that affected him. It was something more. He felt her presence in his mind, in his soul, as if she were a part of him. "The connection is starting," she whispered. Suddenly, the symbols on the walls began to glow, and the humming sound grew louder. The room seemed to come alive with energy, vibrating under the weight of their union. Jack could feel it, the pulse of the ritual, the energy flowing between them, drawing them together. As the queen's hands moved over him, guiding him toward the altar, Jack knew that this was only the beginning. The bond was forming, and there was no turning back now. He was no longer just a human. He was becoming something else, something powerful, something eternal. The ritual had been more intense than Jack could have ever imagined. It had begun with a soft, almost gentle touch, but by the end, it felt as if every part of his body was alive with energy. The bond was stronger now, more real than anything he had ever experienced. The queen, standing beside him, was no longer just an alien leader. She was something deeper, something entwined with him in a way he couldn't explain. For a moment, Jack stood still, trying to process everything that had just happened. He could still feel the queen's presence in his mind, in his very soul. The connection wasn't just physical, it was emotional, mental, spiritual. He could sense her thoughts, her feelings, almost as if they were his own. It was overwhelming. He had never felt anything like it before. "Are you all right?" The queen's voice broke through his thoughts, calm and steady. She was standing beside him now, watching him with those intense violet eyes. Jack took a deep breath and nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think so." The queen studied him for a moment, her gaze softening. "The bond is not just a connection between bodies. It goes deeper. You can feel me now, just as I can feel you. And you will begin to understand things you never thought possible." Jack swallowed, his mind racing. The queen was right. He could feel her, every emotion, every thought, every tiny shift in her being. It was as if a door had opened inside him, revealing a world of knowledge, power, and emotions that were far beyond human comprehension. But with that new understanding came something else, something unexpected. As Jack stood there, His senses heightened. He realized something was wrong. The room around him seemed to pulse with an energy he hadn't noticed before. It was as if the very walls were alive, shifting and changing with every passing second. The Queen noticed his unease. "You feel it too, don't you?" she said quietly. Jack nodded slowly, his heart racing. "What is it? What's happening?" The Queen's expression grew serious. "The bond is not just between you and me, human. It is a link that will affect both our worlds. I have chosen you for more than just your strength. I have chosen you because you are the key to a greater power, a power that will unite our peoples." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He had known that this bond would be significant, but he had never realized just how far-reaching it would be. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice tight. "The energy that connects us," the Queen explained, "is more than just a personal bond. It is a force that has the potential to change the fate of entire worlds. But there are others who would try to control it, to use it for their own gain. They will come for us." Jack's stomach twisted. The idea of being hunted, of becoming a target because of this bond, was something he had never considered. He had come to this planet for a mission. But now, it seemed that mission was no longer important. The stakes had changed. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance. "We need to be ready," the Queen said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "We will face enemies who want to break our connection. But together, we can protect it. Together, we can change everything." Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. There was no going back now. They had forged something powerful, something dangerous, and it seemed the universe itself was about to take notice. The quiet that had settled in the chamber was soon shattered by a low rumbling noise. Jack felt the vibrations through the floor, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. The Queen's expression didn't change, but he could see the tension in her eyes. Something was coming, something that would test the bond they had formed. "We are not alone," the Queen said, her voice calm but filled with a sense of urgency. "There are those who do not approve of our connection, human. They will try to break us." Jack's heart raced as he took a step closer to her. He had always known there would be risks, but hearing it spoken out loud made it all too real. He looked around the chamber, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. The air felt thick with danger. Before he could ask what she meant, a sudden crash echoed from outside the room. The doors to the chamber burst open, and a group of armed aliens stormed in. Jack's instincts kicked in, and he quickly moved to shield the Queen, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But the Queen stopped him with a gesture, her calm demeanor unwavering. "They are my advisors," she said quietly, but there was no warmth in her tone. "They are here to ensure that I do not stray too far from tradition." The aliens who had entered the chamber were tall and imposing, their faces hidden behind helmets that glowed with faint light. Their armor was decorated with symbols Jack didn't recognize, but they were clearly of high rank. They had come to challenge the Queen's decision to bond with a human. Jack could feel their hostility radiating off them as they moved closer. One of the aliens, clearly the leader, stepped forward. His voice was deep and menacing. "Your Majesty, you have made a grave mistake. A human cannot be allowed to join with you in this way. It will weaken our empire. It will destroy everything we have worked for." Jack's jaw clenched. He could see the tension in the Queen's eyes, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she stood taller, her presence commanding. "You underestimate the strength of this bond," she replied, her voice calm but filled with authority. "It is not a weakness. It is the future." The leader of the group sneered. "The future," he mocked. "The future of your empire is at risk. We will not allow you to lead us down this path. We will stop you before it's too late." Jack could feel the Queen's anger rising, but she kept her composure. She knew that these advisors were powerful, but they were not invincible. Still, she didn't make any move to fight back, yet. She turned to Jack, her gaze steady, her mind working quickly. "We have to be careful," she said quietly. "These are not just political rivals. They are warriors, trained to fight with everything they have. If they see us as a threat, they will not hesitate to attack." Jack nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He had never been a diplomat, but he knew enough to understand the danger they were in. This wasn't just a personal challenge anymore. The Queen's entire empire was at stake, and their enemies weren't going to let this new bond go unnoticed. As the tension between the two sides grew, Jack realized one thing. There was no way to avoid the battle ahead. The Queen's enemies were already making their move, and it would only be a matter of time before the fight came to them. The room was thick with tension as the Queen's advisors loomed before them, their eyes filled with distrust and contempt. Jack could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had never imagined being in the middle of an intergalactic political conflict, but here he was, standing beside an alien queen, trying to protect something that felt much bigger than himself. The leader of the group, his voice still filled with disdain, took a step closer to the queen. "You have made your decision, but we will not let it stand. We cannot allow a human to have such influence over our empire. You are making a dangerous mistake, Your Majesty." Jack clenched his fists, his body tense, ready to spring into action. He wasn't a diplomat, and he wasn't here to talk. He was a soldier, but the Queen's gaze stopped him. She wasn't backing down. There was something in her eyes, a calm determination that made him pause. She wasn't afraid. She was a queen, and she wasn't going to let anyone, no matter how powerful, tell her what to do. "Your words carry no weight here," the Queen said, her voice cold and unwavering. "I am the ruler of this empire, and I have chosen my path. You will respect that decision or face the consequences." The advisors exchanged uncertain glances. Jack could see that the leader of the group was struggling to maintain his composure. He had expected fear, submission, but the Queen was not yielding. The power she held was undeniable. Jack could feel it, too, like a force that surged between them, a bond stronger than anything he had ever known. The leader sneered but didn't make a move. Instead, he turned to the others. "This is treason," he muttered. "We cannot allow this to continue." "Enough," the Queen said, her voice carrying an authority that silenced the room. "You will leave now, or I will have you removed." For a moment, it seemed as if they might resist. But then, with a collective movement, the advisors backed away. The leader, his face twisted with anger, gave one final look at Jack and the Queen before turning to leave. Jack exhaled slowly, the tension in the air dissipating as the group withdrew. The Queen remained still, her eyes watching the door long after it had closed behind them. But Jack knew the danger wasn't over. It was only just beginning. "They will come again," Jack said quietly, his voice low. The Queen nodded, her expression unreadable. "Yes, they will. But this bond, this connection we share, it is our strength. We will not be swayed by their fear. Together, we are unstoppable." Jack looked at her, his heart swelling with admiration. There was something in the Queen's words that made him believe it. They were more than just allies now. They were a force, one that could change everything. "We will be ready," Jack said, his voice firm. The Queen's eyes softened, just for a moment, before she turned away, her gaze focused on the horizon outside the chamber. "We will, human. We will." The air was heavy with anticipation. Jack and the Queen stood side by side, their bond stronger than ever. But they both knew that what had just happened in the chamber was only the beginning. The advisors were not the only ones who feared their connection. There were others, far more dangerous, who would stop at nothing to destroy what they had started. The Queen's face was calm, but Jack could see the weight of responsibility in her eyes. She wasn't just fighting for her empire now. She was fighting for their future, for the future of both their species. And with every passing minute, the stakes grew higher. "They will come," the Queen said quietly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I can feel it. They know what we've begun, and they will try to end it before it's too late." Jack nodded, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was part of something far bigger, and if it meant protecting the Queen and the bond they shared, he would do whatever it took. The sound of footsteps broke the silence, and a group of armed soldiers entered the chamber. They were heavily armored, their weapons glinting in the soft light. Jack tensed, his senses on high alert. These weren't the Queen's advisors. These were her enemies, forces sent to stop them, to tear apart the connection that had formed between them. The Queen stepped forward, her posture regal and unwavering. "You are too late," she said, her voice steady but filled with power. "We have already begun, and there is no turning back." The leader of the soldiers, a towering figure with a cruel smile, stepped forward. "You think your bond with this human gives you power," he sneered. "You are nothing but a queen lost in your own desires. You will fall, and when you do, this human will fall with you." Jack's heart raced. He could feel the danger in the air, but he wasn't about to back down. He glanced at the Queen, and for a brief moment, their eyes locked. In that moment, he understood. This wasn't just about a fight. This was about proving that they were more than just a human and an alien queen. They were a force that could not be stopped. "Do you truly believe you can stand against us?" the Queen asked, her voice colder than before. "We are not your enemies, but if you choose to make us so, you will regret it." The soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, but they didn't move. They were clearly unsure, not knowing whether to press the attack or retreat. Jack could see the uncertainty in their eyes. They had heard the stories about the Queen, but now they were facing the reality of her power, and they were hesitant. "Your strength will not save you," the leader growled, taking a step closer. "We have the might of the entire empire behind us. You and this human are nothing." The Queen stepped forward, her presence commanding, a force to be reckoned with. "I am the Empire," she said simply, "and with him, I will lead it into a new era." Suddenly, the soldiers hesitated, their confidence faltering. They had expected an easy victory, but they hadn't counted on the bond between Jack and the Queen. The power between them was undeniable, and for the first time, the soldiers seemed unsure. Jack didn't wait for them to make their next move. He took a step forward, standing beside the Queen, ready to face whatever came next. Together, they were stronger than anyone could have anticipated. The Queen's enemies had come, but they hadn't expected to face a force like this. And Jack knew one thing for sure. They would not back down. Not now. Not ever. The room was silent except for the heavy breathing of the soldiers who had come to challenge them. Jack stood side by side with the Queen, their bond stronger than ever. The tension was thick in the air, but the Queen's presence was calm and resolute. She didn't flinch as the soldiers hesitated, unsure whether to attack or retreat. They had never faced anything like this before. The leader of the soldiers glared at the Queen, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You think you can change everything with this human?" He spat. "The Empire has stood for centuries. It won't fall because of you." The Queen's eyes remained fixed on him, her voice calm but filled with authority. "I am not asking for permission. This is my empire, and I will guide it into a new future, with or without your support." Jack could feel the weight of her words, the power in her presence. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was a battle for a new era. He had come to this planet as a soldier, but now he was part of something much bigger, something that could change the fate of two species forever. The leader of the soldiers sneered, but his voice wavered. "You cannot defeat us. We are the Empire's true strength. You and this human are nothing." Jack stepped forward, his body tense, his mind focused. He wasn't going to let the Queen face this alone. He had made his choice. He had chosen to stand with her. And he wasn't backing down now. The bond they shared had made them stronger, more powerful than they had ever been apart. "We're not nothing," Jack said, his voice steady. "We are everything. Together, we can change this empire. We can make it stronger than ever." The soldiers paused, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. They had expected fear, submission, but instead, they were met with confidence, with a power they hadn't anticipated. The Queen stood tall, her eyes shining with the strength of their connection, and Jack stood beside her, ready to face whatever came next. The leader of the soldiers glanced at his comrades, his expression faltering. He had expected a quick victory, but now he wasn't so sure. The bond between the Queen and Jack was undeniable. They were not just an alliance. They were a force, a united front that couldn't be easily defeated. "I'll give you one chance," the Queen said, her voice strong. "Leave now, and we will not pursue you. But if you continue to stand against us, you will face the consequences." For a long moment, the soldiers stood still, their eyes shifting between the Queen and Jack. The tension was unbearable, but the Queen's resolve was clear. She had made her choice, and she would not back down. Jack could feel her strength radiating through him, and it gave him the courage to stand firm. Finally, the soldiers turned, their leader glaring one last time at the Queen before he led them out of the room. Jack exhaled, his body relaxing for the first time in what felt like hours. The battle had been won, not with weapons, but with the power of their bond. The Queen turned to Jack, her expression softening. "We've done it," she said quietly. "We've won." Jack nodded, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. They had faced the greatest challenge together, and they had emerged victorious. This was only the beginning. Together, they would build a future, one that would change the course of their worlds forever. And as the Queen turned to look at the horizon, Jack knew that the universe was about to witness something extraordinary, the dawn of a new era, shaped by the power of their bond.